Hi, in this video we're going to cover how to assemble and lodge your first STP report with the ATO. We covered how to complete your setup and create your dataset file in the previous video. As mentioned on our website, all lodgements are made through singletouch.com.au. They are a sending service provider and you need to create an account with them and add your ABN. We'll assume you've already done that for the purpose of this video. We're going to start by processing the payroll in MyOb. So click Process Payroll, and on this screen you need to add the dates. So we're paying on the 1st of June for payments from 25th to the 31st. You need to make a note of these dates. You'll need them when completing your Single Touch payroll report. So we click Next. Now we need to select the employees we want to pay. So I'm just going to deselect all of them. And select the ones that we will be paying in this instance. So they're the 9 employees that we pay, and I've already checked these amounts, so we're ready to just process the payment. Before we do, just make a note of this total net pay, $7,392.60. You'll need that for STP as well. So I'm going to record the payment process. So complete the process, print the pay slips, make the payments, etc. But for our purpose I'll just close this now, and we're going to move that aside, and we're going to close MyOb, and we're back at STP Creator. So on payday, after you've processed the payroll in MyOb, run STP Creator and open the permanent data set. So click on Open Permanent Data Set. Last time we created new, this time we just click Browse and select the data set that's linked to our MyOb file. Click Open. Here we'll be prompted to enter our credentials, and if you forget the password, click the hint button and that may remind you. Okay, now as you can see, all the previous information we saved is here, including the payroll categories, the 8 we mapped, the 10 payees that we included. So we don't need to do anything on this screen. We don't need to go in any of these unless something's changed in our MyOb file. If we've created a new payroll category or added a new payee, there are videos covering what to do and how to update. However, on a normal payday, we just open this file and then click Save and Close. And as you can see, step 1 is completed because those two numbers agree and that payer checked is yes. So what we do now is click Assemble Year-to-Date Data, and this is when it's going to want to read data out of your MyOb file. So you enter the password if you have one, and the data has now been read, and that is the year-to-date data that has just been extracted out of MyOb, and there's no error messages or warnings to concern us, so we just click Save. Then we go to Assemble W1, W2 data. Now the difference between those two is this is all year-to-date data for all the employees that have been paid this year, and this is the W1 and W2 amounts for the pay period. So we need to click on here, and the first thing we need to do is specify the pay period. Now this is where we need to select the same dates that we selected in MyOb. So it's from the 25th to the 31st, and the payment date was on the 1st of June. So we'll leave that as is. STP Creator will only include payroll transactions on that date. So we click OK, and now this is the W1, W2 amounts. You'll recall when we processed the payroll in MyOb, the net payment was $7,392.60. Now that agrees exactly with these amounts, and that's a good reference point. Now bear in mind they won't necessarily always agree. It depends on your payroll categories. If there's an amount that is not reported for W1, W2, that may cause a difference between the net amount here and mine. That's perfectly normal. Check the online help for further explanations. For example, if there was donations or union fees which were deducted out of the employee's pay, obviously the net pay in MYOB will be lower than the net pay here because we don't report donations or union fees. Okay, so no error message, no warnings, so we just click Save. And as you can see, now that that's completed, this button is now lit up, so we can click Assemble Lodgement Data. Okay, we've received a warning. What this says is Amy Smith has a value for termination date. However, this STP field is not selected. And secondly, Amy Smith, termination date not in this pay period. Should this employee be included? Now, the answer to this question is yes, she should be included because this is our first STP report and we need to report on all employees paid this year. Otherwise, we have to issue them a separate payment summary. So by including all terminated employees in our first STP report, we fulfill our payment summary obligations. But what we need to do is attend to this first issue, saying the field was not selected. So I'm going to close this. This will show us the lodgement data, but we're going to close that and we need to go back to the permanent data set and STP fields. As you can see, there's a field here for termination date and that wasn't selected. So the first warning was just reminding us that there's a termination date, but this field wasn't selected. So I'm going to now select it and click OK and click Close. Now, although I've completed these steps already, because we've gone back and made a change to the data set, we need to repeat these steps. So I'm going to click Assemble and then Assemble W1. The dates, all the data is still there. And we're going to click Save, and now we click here. And now we click this again. And this time the warnings is only one. Termination date is not in this pay period. Should this person be excluded? Well, that's just a warning and you can ignore that because we need to include her in our first STP report. We will exclude her from subsequent ones in order to bring ourselves up to date with STP. To avoid having to issue payment summaries to terminated employees, we include them in our first STP report. So I'm going to click Close, and this brings up the final payee lodgement data. This is the data that STP Creator is going to send to the ATO, and we can see Amy here has a termination date. It's important here, particularly on the first few STP reports, to have a good look at all the figures, make sure the data being sent is all correct. This column shows the year-to-date gross being reported for each of the payees. This shows the employee tax, the super guarantee amounts, and there's one there, 0, that might raise some eyebrows, but it's, in this case, the employee was earning under $450 per month, and so it's quite appropriate. There's no super guarantee there, and make sure all the allowances are correctly reported. While we're on this screen, I'm just going to point out a couple of things. Update, no W1, W2. Today we're reporting what's called a pay event. We've made a payment and we're reporting that payment. There'll be times when, for example, if we make a mistake and we want to resubmit to correct some figures, we do that as an update event. So we're not reporting new payments, we're just correcting old payments. Another time when you use the update is at the end of the year. After you've done your final pay, if you didn't finalize all your payees, you need to issue a final indicator. And some people will do that after they've finished their final pay, after they've done their reconciliations with their BAS and everything else, the bank recs. Once you know that the figures are correct, you can do what's called an update event. That won't send through any W1, W2 amounts, but it will send through the year-to-date totals, and you need to add the final indicator. Now, a final indicator is to indicate to the ATO that this is now the final amount for each of the payees. In our case, we are including Amy Smith, who was terminated in July. We have checked the figures against our other MIB records, and these amounts for her are correct. So what we need to do, because this is our first STP report, is to finalise Amy Smith. So to do that, you tick the box there and click this final indicator button. What that does is, when we leave her highlighted, final indicator is now set as true, and the ATO will regard these as the final figures for Amy. This is the same as physically issuing a payment summary to Amy. So we do that on our first STP report for all employees who were paid this year but are no longer with us. The other thing here is a full file replacement. After you've sent a pay event, if you realise it's a lot of mistakes, you can either fix it next time, or you can do what's called a full file replacement. If you tick that, the ATO will ignore the previous file that you sent, and it will accept this new one as a full file replacement. This button here is to show all STP fields. At the moment, STP Creator is only showing the fields that you have included in your STP fields. If you click this button, all of a sudden you'll see a whole lot more additional fields like reportable super, lump sum indicator, lump sum A, etc., etc. That's all the fields that are going to the ATO. But for simplicity, we generally hide the ones you don't use and display just the fields that you are dealing with. TFN declaration: if a new payee has started and he or she has provided a TFN declaration, you can report that TFN declaration through your STP. Say, for example, if Ashley had started this week and he'd given us a tax file number declaration, you tick that box and click TFN declaration, complete the fields based on the declaration they've provided, and then click OK. And this data will then be sent to the ATO together with your other STP data. And so that's how you would report a TFN declaration to the ATO. But in this case, I'll just click cancel. Are you sure you want to cancel? Yes. Final indicator, I've already mentioned. That's when every employee has to get a final indicator at some point, either at the end of the year or earlier, like as Amy is having this time because she's terminated. Come 30 June, you're going to have to issue a final indicator for everybody. Reset final indicator, that's just in case you've accidentally selected it, changed to true. If we want to change it back to false, select it and reset it. So that's just changes it for this session. For Amy, we want to issue a final indicator, so I'll put final. Once you've checked all the figures and satisfied yourself that you've got everything correct, the next step is to click Lodge. That brings up this Lodge STP report screen. You need to click I declare to declare that the information is true and correct. Your name is pre-filled here. You can change it if you like. And then what we need to do is click Sign In. And this will bring up a sign-in box for your single touch payroll account. This is the account you create with Single Touch Payroll Proprietary Limited from the link in our website. And so click Sign In. And if you see this action cannot be completed because the program is busy, just click Retry. And as you can see, successfully signed in, and there's an access token here which you can largely ignore. And now the Send button is lit up. So I'm going to click Send. And that's now sending all that STP data to the ATO. And here we get a message saying success or status success. So we have now finished lodging our first STP report. We can close this screen and close this screen, or what we can do, I didn't mention this button, Save Image File. what this does is saves a file with all of the data from all of the screens. This might be useful in the first few STP reports, and we recommend you save this data just in case there's a query, something's not quite right, and you can't work out why STP Creator is giving you the figures it is. That image file can help explain and identify what the issue was. So I'm going to click Save As, and as you'll see here, there's a file name that's already pre-filled. Always use that, and that's a unique identifier for this lodgement based on the ABN branch, the name of our product, the date and the time. So just click Save, and once you've done that you can click Close. You're back to the main screen and you can click here to exit. However, what I suggest you do after your first STP report, when you had employees who were terminated, is to go back into the data set, click on the payee, and you'll recall Amy has been terminated. She has a termination date, and we have finalized her. So what we want to do is exclude her from next week's report. So I'm going to click highlight her name, then click exclude. That's yes at the moment. It's going to change to no. So we look at Amy now, that's no. Our numbers have gone down from 9, and checked has gone down to 9. So subsequent reports, or next week when you do your pay, Amy will no longer be included. So click Save, and then Save, and then you can close STP Creator. I will show you what happens next week when you do your pays. When you click this button, you'll see this message here. There are one or more pays where payee in STP is set to no. However, they have a reportable year-to-date amount. Now, this is because of Amy Smith. We know that there's year-to-date amounts in MyOb, and they stay there until we start a new payroll year. We know we have reported on Amy already, and we don't want to include her in subsequent reports, so we can ignore this message. Okay, so I'm just going to close that and cancel this because we'll do that next time, and I'm just going to exit out of here. And that's how you assemble and lodge your first STP report. Thanks for watching.